Welcome back to my complete Dart course for beginners and beyond. This video contains the 5th chapter of my course, and I've decided to share this for free here on YouTube. And if you're serious about learning Dart, you should consider buying my full course on Udemy. This will include over 8 hours of content and comes with premium support as well as a complete reference ebook about Dart. And you can buy the full course for a discounted price by typing this URL in your browser. Okay, so let's get started. In the first few sections of this course, we have started exploring the features of the Dart language, and we will continue doing this in the rest of the course. But learning about language features alone is not enough to make you a software developer, because programming languages are just tools, and your job as a developer is to use those tools to solve real problems. So in this section, we will take a break from language features and we will learn about building command line apps with Dart. As part of this, we will install the Dart SDK and all the tools that we need to develop Dart applications, so that we can create programs that run on our local machine and do interesting things that are not possible with Dartpad. For example, in this section, we will build a simple game that can play rock, paper, and scissors. This will not have any graphical user interface, and instead it will be just a simple command line app where both you and the computer can play rock, paper, and scissors, and depending on the outcome, you either win, lose, or get a draw. And you can play this game over and over. So this will be a good project to practice some of the language features that we have learned so far. And in the upcoming sections, we will write programs to do things like data processing or getting weather information from a remote server. And I feel that by completing these practical projects, you will get a much better understanding about what programming is all about and what you can do with Dart. And it will also help you to get in the mindset of using programming languages to solve problems. So we will start each practical project with a set of requirements and figure out how to build a program that satisfies those requirements. Okay, so our next goal is to set up a local development environment that we can use to build command line apps in Dart. To do this, we will install the Dart SDK as well as Visual Studio Code, which will be our code editor. So let's get started in the next lesson. In this lesson, we are going to install the Dart SDK. And if you have an active Dartpad window, the easiest way to get started is to press this button called Install SDK. This will take you to this page where you can find all the instructions. And the first thing to notice is that if you already have the Flutter SDK installed on your system, then the Dart SDK is already included as part of it. So if that's the case, you can skip to the next lesson. But for now, I will assume that you never installed the Flutter or Dart SDK before, so that I can show you all the installation steps. So let's move over to this section about installing the Dart SDK. And if we read this paragraph, we can see that there are various ways of doing this. So in this lesson, I'll show you how to do this using a package manager as well as by downloading the SDK as a zip file. But you're completely free to choose any of these installation methods. Okay, so let's see how to install the Dart SDK with a package manager. The first thing that you'll want to do is to open a terminal or command prompt. On macOS, you can do this by using Spotlight over here and typing terminal. Or in my case, I can use my favorite terminal, which is called iTerm. So this is how the terminal looks like on macOS, and if you are on Windows, you can press on the search bar at the bottom and type CMD and select the command prompt. And once you have a terminal window, you can copy and paste the relevant commands for your system. And if I run this now, I will see that I already have everything installed on my system. But if it's the first time you do this, running these commands might take a while, and once the process is complete, then Dart will be installed. And to make sure that everything is installed correctly, here you can type Dart and press Enter, and you should see this output telling you how to use the Dart command line tool. So if you're running on Windows or Linux, the instructions will be different, but your goal is that at the end of the installation process, you should be able to run Dart and see this output. So if you already reached this stage and this is working for you, you can skip the rest of this lesson and continue to the next one. However, if you don't have a package manager installed, I'm going to show you how to install the Dart SDK manually. To do this, you can choose this option to download the SDK as a zip file. This takes us to the Dart SDK archive page, and if we scroll down, we can choose which version we want, and for which platform, depending on whether we are running on Mac, Linux, or Windows. Also, note that we can download the SDK from the stable, beta, or dev channel. But for now, we'll go ahead and download the SDK from the stable channel. And just so you know, you can use the beta or dev channels if you want a more recent version with newer features. Okay, so I'm running on Mac and I'm going to go ahead and choose version 2.9.0. So make sure to choose the correct version for your operating system. And once I click on the link to get the Dart SDK, I get this confirmation dialog. So here I'm going to save the file and press OK. And this will start the download. Once the download is complete, I can open my downloads folder, and here I can find the downloaded zip file. This should look quite similar if you are on Windows or Linux. So the next step is to decide where we want to keep the Dart SDK in our system. In my case, I'm going to move this file over to a different folder like this, and you can choose any folder you want, provided that you have read and write access to it. Next, we can extract the Dart SDK. And once this process is complete, we can see this folder with all these files inside it. And inside here, we can open this bin folder and find all the executables that are needed by Dart. So at this stage, you have Dart on your system, but before you can use it on the command prompt, there is one more important step to do, and that is to add Dart to your path environment variable. Now, the path environment variable is used to locate any executable programs in your system so that they can be run on the command line. When you install any command line tools with a package manager, then you don't need to worry about this. But if you install things manually, you need to update the path so that it knows where to find the commands you need. The other thing that you should know is that your path should be persisted into a specific configuration file that is executed every time you start a terminal or command line prompt. So in my case, I'm running on macOS, and in order to update my path, I need to type open and then ~.zshrc like this. And this is a configuration file that contains a lot of settings. And inside here, I should type export. And here I want this to be all in lowercase, so autocorrect did the wrong thing here. And then path equals, and then I'm going to paste the system path where I copied the Dart SDK earlier on, making sure to add the bin subfolder at the end. And then after this, I'm going to type colon and then $path like this. And what this does is to concatenate this directory with the previous value of the path variable. So make sure that you use the path to the directory where you copied the Dart SDK. And once I made this change, I can save this file and close this editor. After this, I can open a new terminal, and here I can type Dart. And if everything is set up correctly, then I should see the usage description for Dart. And I can also confirm which installation of Dart I'm using by typing which Dart. And this will print the full path to the Dart executable that is in use. So this completes our Dart installation on macOS. If you're running on Windows, you have to follow a different procedure to set up your path. First of all, you have to select the search bar and type env, and then select the option to edit the system environment variables. Then you'll be taken to a System Properties dialog, and from here you need to select the Advanced tab and click on Environment Variables at the bottom. This will show all the environment variables for your current user, and here you need to select the path variable and click Edit. And on the next screen you can create a new line and add the directory that contains your Dart SDK. And after you click OK, you should be able to open a new command prompt, and if you type Dart now, you should see this output. So this completes our setup of the Dart SDK, and if anything is not working, I recommend that you watch this lesson again or follow the instructions on the website, because we will need a working Dart installation going forward. Okay, so let's continue on the next lesson. Visual Studio Code is a very powerful and customizable code editor that you can use to code in many different programming languages, and this includes Dart and Flutter as well. So in this video, I'll show you how to install it and configure it for Dart development. So you can go ahead and open this page at code.visualstudio.com, and here you can download the latest stable build for your system. So you can start the download, and once this is complete, you can extract the zip file in your downloads folder, and follow the installation instructions for your system. So if you are on Mac, you can just drag and drop this into your applications folder. Or if you are on Windows, you can install this just like any other application. And once you have done this, you should be able to start Visual Studio Code directly from your system launcher. Like this. So this is how the VS Code editor looks like. And I should mention that if you want, you can launch VS Code directly from the command line. To enable this on macOS, you should first click on View, Command Palette here at the top. And here you can type install. And then you need to select this option to install code command in path. So this is a step that you need to complete on macOS only, and once you have done this, you can open a new terminal, and from here you can type code dot like this, and this will open VS Code in the current folder. Okay, so before we can use this, we need to install an extension that enables the Dart language support. This is very easy, and all we have to do is to select this extensions icon from the navigation options on the left, and in this search box we can type Dart like this, and then we can select the first option. And in my case, I already have this installed, but in your case you'll find an install button. So you need to press that button, and once you have done this, you'll see this label saying that the extension is enabled globally. Okay, so you are now all set and ready to start developing Dart applications with VS Code. And before we continue, I just want to give you a quick tour so that you know about the essential features of VS Code. On the left, we have various icons that reveal various features of VS Code. The first one is a project explorer that shows all the files and folders in the current project. And then you have other useful features such as search and replace, source control with Git, run and debug, and extensions. So we will use some of these features as needed as we make progress. But for now, I want to mention that VS Code is extremely customizable, and there are some very useful extensions that you should consider installing. First of all is the color theme that you want to use for development. VS Code comes with a default theme, but the one that I like to use is called Dracula. So you can just type it in here, so you can select this and feel free to install and enable this if you want. The second extension that I recommend is called Bracket Pair Colorizer 2 that you can find over here. And this is very useful because it allows matching brackets to be identified with colors. Finally, I also recommend that you install another extension called Error Lens. And this can show you errors in your code as you type. And I'm a big fan of this because it improves my productivity by making it easier to see any errors early on. So all these extensions are optional, but I recommend that you use them as they will help you as you make progress. Finally, there is one more thing that I want to show you, and that is the built-in terminal. So if you go to the menu at the top, you can select View and then Terminal, and this opens up a terminal at the bottom. So this is what we will use to compile and run our Dart programs. Alongside this, we have some other tabs such as Debug Console, Output, and Problems. So we will use the terminal for now and explore these other options if we need them. Okay, so this completes our overview of VS Code, and we can continue on the next lesson. Now that we've installed the Dart SDK and Visual Studio Code, we have everything we need to get started building command line apps in Dart. And that means that we can take a look at our first practical project, which is a game to play rock, paper, and scissors. This is a game that is played by 2 players, and every time the game is played, each player uses their hand to show a rock, paper, or scissors shape. And the rules of the game are that rock beats scissors, scissors beat paper, and paper beats rock. So each player wins or loses according to these rules. So in this project, we are going to implement this game in such a way that you are one of the players and your computer is the other player. So when you run this program, it will ask you if you want to play rock, paper, or scissors. And you can do this by typing R for rock, P for paper, or S for scissors. After you do that, the program will choose one of these 3 options at random, and it will determine who has won by applying the game rules. And we can play this game over and over. So in order to build this program, we need to learn how to get user input from the console so that you can play your move, and also how to choose a random number that will be used by the program to simulate the other player's move. In summary, these are the requirements of this project. built a command line tool that can play rock, paper, and scissors. When started, the program should show this prompt, rock, paper, or scissors. It should then read the user input and use it as follows. If the user enters R, P, or S, treat this as a valid move. If the user enters Q, then quit the program. And if the user enters anything else, show invalid input and prompt again. After the user has entered a valid move, generate another move at random and then compare the two moves according to the rules of the game. For example, if you played rock and the program played paper, then the output should be you played rock, AI played paper, you lose. The game should repeat until the player quits by pressing Q. Okay, so let's continue on the next lesson where we will start writing this program. We are now ready to start implementing our rock, paper, and scissors game. As a first step, I'll show you how to create your first command line app using Dart. To get started, you can create an empty folder somewhere in your system. And to do this, you can open a terminal and type mkdir and then rock underscore paper underscore scissors, like this. And then you can go to that directory by typing cd and then rock, and you can press tab to autocomplete this. Then we can type code dot to open a VS Code instance on this folder. Okay, so VS Code now points to our new folder, and as we can see in the project panel, there are no files. So to get started, we can right click here and choose new file, and we can call this rock, paper, scissors .dart, like this. And you can name this file any way you want, but keep in mind that Dart files should only use numbers, letters, and underscores. Okay, so this file will hold all the logic for our program. And as we have already seen, Dart programs need an entry point, which is also known as the main method. So over here we can type void main, like this, and inside it we can add a temporary statement that says print hello world, like this. So I can save this. And next, I can show you how to run this program. To do this, I can open a terminal panel inside VS Code, and the easiest way to do this is to use this shortcut on macOS or Windows. And to execute this program, we can type Dart, and we can press Tab to automatically complete the file name. And then we can press Enter, and when we do this, Dart will compile this Dart file and run it on the Dart virtual machine. And as we can see, the program prints hello world and completes immediately. So everything works, and we can continue on the next lesson where we will start writing our game. Now that we know how to run our Dart program from the terminal, it's a good time to figure out what game logic we need to implement. For convenience, I've added the program requirements as a new file inside this project so that they are easier to follow. And by the way, if you open the GitHub repo for this course, you can navigate to projects and then rock, paper, and scissors. And here you can find all the project requirements. And on the same folder, I've also added the complete source code for this project. So if you get stuck at any point, you can always refer to the working implementation, which is here. So before we dive into the code, let's take a moment to figure out how we can satisfy these requirements. And to do this, I'm going to add some comments that represent our game logic. So the first thing that we need to do is to show a prompt and ask the user to choose rock, paper, or scissors. Then we need to read the user input from the console. Then we need to check if the input is one of the possible moves that we recognize. And if this is the case, we choose the AI move at random. And then we can compare the player move with the AI move and show the result. Otherwise, if the input is Q, then we quit the program. And if the input is anything else, then we print invalid input. Not only that, but we need to execute all these steps inside an infinite loop so that we can play over and over. So having this pseudocode representation of the game logic is quite useful because we have a clearer picture of what we have to do. So when you are presented with some new problem or requirement, try to think in these terms before you write any code. This gives you a high-level overview of your solution, and you can more easily see the various steps that you need to take without worrying about all the details. So let's continue on the next video. Now that we have established what our game logic looks like, we can tackle the first problem, which is to show a prompt to the user so that we can ask to play rock, paper, or scissors. To do that, we can reuse this print statement and change the text to rock, paper, or scissors. And after this, we need to find a way to read the user input from the console. To do that, we need to use the so-called standard input. So here I can type stdin with a semicolon, and as you can see, Dart complains that stdin is an undefined name. So in this case, stdin is not something that we are going to create, but instead it's a variable that we need to import from a library called Dart.io. So the easiest way to do this is to move our input caret on this variable, and then we can press Command dot or Control dot if you're on Windows to reveal a set of options. And here we can choose Import Library Dart.io. And as we can see, VS Code has added a new import statement at the top of the file, and we no longer have an error on this line. Now, this is the first time that we use an import statement, and import statements are very useful because they give us a way to import functionality that lives outside of our own code. And as we will see, the Dart SDK itself comes with a number of libraries that we can use for this purpose. So the takeaway here is that in order to read user input from the console, we need to use the stdin variable, and we need to import the Dart.io library because that's where this variable is defined. And if we hover our mouse over this import, we can see a pop-up that shows us the documentation of Dart.io. So this is a quick and useful way of learning more about external functionality that we need to use in our code. Okay, so let's carry on and see how we can read some user input. So to do this, here we can type .read line sync like this, and this is a method that we can use to read a line from the console, and this method returns a string value. So to complete this statement, here we can type final input equals like this, and just to show you how this works, here I can type print input. So the idea here is to read some input and print it back out to console. And now that we have this, we can save the file, and then we can open the terminal and run the program again. By the way, let me give you a terminal top tip. Here you don't need to type in this line again, and if you want to run the last command that was executed, you can just use the up and down arrows to navigate the history of commands that you've executed before. Okay, so let's run this, and as you can see, the program asks for rock, paper, and scissors. And here we can type R and press enter, and the program prints R back to us because that's what this print statement does. So we now know how to read user input from the console, and before we continue, I'd like to make a small adjustment. As you can see, the program prints this line, but then moves directly to the next line before we enter our input. So this is how the print statement works, but I think it would be better if we could get the user input on the same line. To do that, we can modify this line and replace this print statement with stdout.write, like this. So this stands for standard output, and it gives us more control over how we print to console. So let me also add a space at the end of this string, and then we can save. And here we can run our program once again. And as we can see, now the terminal prompt waits on the same line for the user input. So here we can type any string we want, and the program will repeat this on the console. In summary, in this lesson, we have seen how to use the standard input and standard output variables, which are both defined inside the Dart.io library. So let's continue on the next lesson. In this lesson, we will see how to implement a game loop so that we can continue to play rock, paper, and scissors until the user decides to quit the program. And as we have seen in the previous section, we can run loops using a while statement. So what we want to do is to put these three lines that ask the user for the next move inside a loop. And since we want to play this game over and over, we should run an infinite loop. To do this, here we can type while true, and then we can use curly braces and put all this code inside it. And because this condition is always true, then this program will never complete. So let's see how this works in practice and run the program again. So let's run this, and as usual, we get our prompt, and here we can choose, for example, R and press enter, and we can see that we get the prompt once again. So we can type P, and we get the prompt over and over again. So this program never quits. But if we want, we can still interrupt the program by pressing Ctrl+C. And Ctrl+C is a system shortcut that works not just for this program, but for all command line applications. Next, we would like to add some logic so that we can start checking the user input, as we will need this to implement the game logic. So let's remove this print statement, and over here we can add an if statement that checks for valid input by typing if input equals R, or input equals P, or input equals S. And for now we can add a print statement that says selected and then $input, like this. Next, we could also add a check so that we can quit the program if the user presses the Q key. To do this, we can add an else if input equals Q, and here we can add a break statement so that when the user enters Q, we break out of the while loop, and this causes the program to finish. Finally, let's add one more else statement, and here we can print invalid input, like this. So this is a good way to give users some feedback when they enter an invalid input. Okay, so let's save and run our program once again. And now we can enter R, P, or S to stay in the loop and continue playing. And if we type anything else, then we get invalid input. And if we press Q, then the program completes. Okay, so our main loop is now complete and we can continue on the next lesson. In this lesson, we are going to add the game logic so that we can play against the computer or AI. And since there are only 3 valid moves that we can make in this game, I suggest that we create an enumeration to represent this. So at the top, above the main method, we can type enum move, and then within curly braces, rock, paper, scissors, like this. And then inside this if statement, we can create a var player move, like this, and this variable will be initialized to rock, paper, or scissors depending on the user input. So let's see how to do this. Over here we can type if input equals R, then player move equals move.rock, else if input equals P, then player move equals move.paper, and then else player move equals move.scissors, like this. And just to be clear, this variable is not explicitly initialized when it's declared. As a result, its value is set to null by default. But after this, we check what's the value of the input and assign it with move.rock, paper, or scissors. So by the time we reach this line, then this variable definitely has a value, because one of these assignments will have been executed. Next, we need to implement the AI code for this program. And as we said, we want the AI to choose a move at random. And to do that, we are first going to choose a random integer number between 0 and 2. And then we're going to use this to determine the AI move. So let's see how to do this. In order to choose a random number, we need to create a random number generator. This random number generator only needs to be created once before the while loop. So here we can type final and then rng for random number generator equals and then random, like this. And as we can see, Dart complains that the function random isn't defined. To fix this, we are going to use our magic wand and press command dot, and we can import the Dart math library. So this adds an import at the top of the file and the previous error goes away. And like we did before, if we want, we can hover to see the documentation of random. Next, after this if statement, we can type final random equals rng dot next int with a value of 3. And before we continue, I want to show you the documentation for this method. So here we can hover over the next int method, and this shows a pop-up where we can read that this generates a non-negative random number uniformly distributed in the range from 0 to max exclusive. So this is what we want. And once again, you can always hover to check the documentation this way. And if you want, you can even open the source file that contains this method by pressing Command click or Ctrl click on Windows. And this gives you access to both the documentation and the source code for this. So when you don't know how something works, don't be afraid to read the documentation. This is only one click away, and I can assure you that Dart and Flutter has some of the best documentation I've ever seen. Okay, so let's get back on track. And another quick tip to get back to the previous file is to press Ctrl Tab, and this will reveal a list of the active files in VS Code. And you can hit Ctrl Tab multiple times to choose the file that you want and release to open it. Okay, so now that we have this random number, we need to get the corresponding move. So here we can type final AI move equals move dot values, and then within square brackets random, like this. Now this syntax is something that we haven't encountered before, so let me explain it. When we have an enumeration such as this one, we can type dot values to get a list of all the values on the enumeration. And this list is ordered in such a way that the first value will have index 0, the second value will have index 1, and the third value will have index 2. And what we are doing here is to use the random index variable as an index to get the corresponding enumeration value. And to do that, we need to use this syntax, which uses square brackets. And this is also known as the subscript operator. So this is new syntax, and we will talk about lists and accessing values by index in detail in the next section. But for now, the takeaway is that when we have an enumeration, we can get a specific value by index by using an integer variable. And because both player move and AI move are variables of type move, then we can compare them together. So this is a good time to show you another diagram that represents the rules of rock, paper and scissors in table format. And as you can see, when both players make the same move, then the game is a draw. So in our code, we can add a condition that says if player move equals AI move, then print it's a draw, like this. And then we are left with 6 remaining outcomes, and we need to find a way to write these as code. And I propose that we do this with an else if statement. And inside here, we need to add some Boolean logic to express all the cases where the player wins. So we can type if player move equals move the rock and AI move equals move the scissors. Then we can print you win, like this. But we are not done yet, because there are 2 more cases where the player wins. So here we can expand this condition and type or, and then on a new line, player move equals move dot paper and AI move equals move the rock, or, and then new line, player move equals move the scissors and AI move equals move the paper, like this. So if this entire condition is true, then the player wins. And then we can add a final else clause. And here we can type print you lose, like this. And the reason this logic is correct is that these if-else statements are mutually exclusive. And this means that we only print you lose if the game is not a draw and the player didn't win. So this completes the logic for our game. So we can remove this print statement and save. And then we can run this once again. So this time we can press, for example, R for rock, and we see that the game is a draw. But the program doesn't actually tell us why this happened. So it would be useful to add some print statements so that we know which move was played by the player as well as the AI. So this is easy to do, and here before the if statement we can print you played and then player move and print AI played and then AI move, like this. So let's save again, and here we can stop the previous program and run this again. And now every time we play the game, we can see the player move, the AI move, and the outcome. So this is much better. So this completes our project, and our game of rock, paper and scissors is fully functional, and you can have a little fun playing the game. Now, this is not a very complex game because all rules can be encoded in a 3x3 table that can be implemented with some if-else statements. But this project was a great learning exercise because we now know how to write and run command line apps in Dart using VS Code, and we have learned how to get user input, which is something that is not possible with Dartpad, and also how to generate random numbers. And what's even more important is that we have learned about problem solving, because we have been able to translate a set of requirements into some pseudo code that looks like this and produce a working implementation. And we will create more interesting command line applications as we make progress. Okay, so let's continue on the next section. This is the end of the 5th chapter. As a reminder, you can buy the full course on Udemy and get access to all the premium content that will not be included here on YouTube. So type this URL in your browser to buy my full course for a discounted price. Thank you very much for watching, and if you found this useful, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.